Hey everybody, I'm JJ, you're watching Reality Survival, and so today we're going to talk about what I think are the 10 distinct different stages that would lead to a civil war if we were ever to have one here in the United States. Or another one, I should say. Now, let me just start with saying that I really do believe that we have to see all of these different phases kind of come to fruition before you could actually ever see a real full civil war going. There's a common, well, let's just say it's become more and more common to see headlines in the news talking about civil war and the fact that everybody feels like, or a lot of people feel like, that we're building to a civil war. And who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's true. I'm not sure. But I think that there's certain phases that we have to go through, because if we don't go through these particular phases, then all that would happen is if, let's say, some armed militia group or whatever the case may be, they get together, even if it's a large group, they're just going to be individually hunted down and jailed by federal law enforcement officers and state law enforcement officers and local law enforcement officers and all that kind of stuff. And so it won't be a long-lived thing. And that's we don't want violence in the country, right? Nobody wants violence in the country. And ideally, if there is going to have to be some sort of a national divorce or something like that, it would, in my opinion, it would be better if we could go about changing things in a nonviolent way. So we should seek to use the political system as much as possible so that we can avoid the violence, right? And that is why I'm talking to you about these things, so that you could recognize the things that are happening. And then it also, at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about how we can keep these things from happening, or what you can do as opposed to engaging in violence, all right? So that's the whole, impetus and idea behind this. And let me just say that each one of these stages, I kind of think of them, it's not so much like a Venn diagram where you've got overlapping circles, but it's more like you've got these long oblong shapes, if you were going to diagram this out, and there's a lot of overlap in each section. If you were going to lay it out linearly, then there's a long overlap in each section as the intensity kind of builds as it goes down the line. At least that's the way that I picture it in my own head. So with that, let's just go ahead and get into this here real quick. So, and I'll tell you that it was the strangest thing, the way this stuff came to me, and maybe I am completely wrong, and you guys can tell me in the comments below which stages are wrong or which ones are out of order, or maybe they're not totally relative. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But this just, because I was thinking about it, it was on my mind. I was seeing a bunch of news articles talking about it. Tucker Carlson was talking about it, different things, and I was like, man, it's crazy how this has gotten so mainstream. And so I was like, but I knew in my head, from my time in law enforcement, is like this, it isn't going to develop the way people think it's going to. And so I was trying to figure out what it is and all that kind of stuff. And like 3 o'clock in the morning, one morning, I woke up and I just got my little phone out and my Evernote and just started pounding it down. It just like all became very clear. So it seems clear to me, but and I don't know, and maybe it's just because I was just spending so much mental energy on it or whatever. But it was weird. Anyway, so first phase is degradation, and this is the phase that begins with the erosion or degradation of common values. So basically, you have to, in order for a society to break apart, you've got to break down the bonds that bind a society together. And those are primarily going to be God, family, and a sense of common purpose or patriotism. Those are the things that in this country, at least, have traditionally, even in the past when the left and right disagreed, there was common ground that they could all, kind of agree on. And I think we're seeing that there is a concerted effort right now to degrade those common bonds and to do away with them. So that's the first thing. And it seems to me that we're pretty safely at least starting down that road. Now, maybe it will get worse and worse with time. Again, like I said, kind of a long, stretched out oblong oval. It may go for a while. The second phase is a stratification phase. And this is where people will begin to move to states that most closely reflect their values. You're going to start to see a reshuffling of society, and large numbers of people are going to start moving to safer ground. And to some extent, we've already seen this one as well. Several congressional seats have changed because of mass migration out of California and New York, and picking up seats in places like Texas and Florida and different things like that. So that's already starting as well. But I do believe that it's just at the beginning phases. I think that's going to get significantly worse. I think that is going to continue over the next several years. We're going to see this intensify, most likely. The next one, stage 3, is polarization, and that's where the red states are going to become more red, the blue states are going to become more blue, and each of the states will reinforce their values with the power of the state. And they're going to do that by packing local government, county level governments, and all that kind of stuff with a unified base. So the profile of the elected offices in this stage is going to change, and it's going to become much more one-sided, where you might have, currently you may have kind of mixed, seats and kind of purple areas and all that kind of stuff. Those are probably going to go away, and they're going to shift more towards one side or the other, is my guess. And in doing that, those state and local governments are going to have the ability to legislate in favor of their constituents. Now, this is one of the reasons why I've talked to you guys so many times about the importance of getting involved in your local government and being a part of the political process, whichever side you want to be on. I don't care. Red side, blue side, whatever the case may be. It's just important that you're taking part in your representative government, because as the rest of this stuff goes down, if you don't, somebody else will. Okay? So it's important, I think. All right, so that's the polarization side, stage. So then stage 4 is sterilization. And that is where the unified power base is going to use its newfound power to pass laws to make it legally hostile to the other side, which will then further enforce or force everyone to pick a side and relocate to states that are more aligned with their values. So it's going to push that stratification even harder as it goes. As this thing goes, and as it stretches down the line, it's going to make that stratification problem a whole lot worse. And essentially, what they're doing is they're sterilizing, all the bad elements out of the states, that they don't want. So the red states are going to become more purely red. The blue states will become more purely blue, and there'll be less resistance or whatever in each place. So then stage 5 is sanctification, and this is not in a biblical sense. not at all, not what I'm trying to say. But this is in the state. This is the stage where states will create sanctuary states and counties to a higher degree level than what we've seen even so far, where states are going to begin to exert their autonomy from the federal government, and the counties will start exerting autonomy from the states that they live within or that they belong to. And we've seen some early signs of some of this stuff, and it's mostly been symbolic at this point. But I think that we're going to see some things start to pop up that are more than just symbolic. Now, whether or not they actually have the legal teeth to be able to hold and all that kind of stuff, I don't really know. I don't really know for sure. But we'll talk more about that later down in the next stages. So the next stage is going to be indignation, and that is where the federal government and the states will attempt to impose their will over the states or counties that they are disagreeing with and who have expressed autonomy. So the rhetoric is going to increase, and it's going to become really indignant towards each other. And we have obviously started to see some of that on both sides. Both the right and the left so far have engaged in dehumanizing, talk about each other. And I think that is going to get worse. But what this particular stage, I think, is going to be, it'll be more indicative when you see actual officials, not just people in the street, but actual officials who are lobbing these sort of really indignant insults and all that kind of stuff. And that's going to be it's going to take it to another level, and so we'll leave it at that. Stage 7 is litigation, and I think states and counties will begin to sue one another and the federal government. So within one particular state, if you've got counties that are, have created sanctuary counties and whatnot, this is where you're going to start to see those lawsuits go back and forth, trying to enforce their own autonomy that they have created. And it's going to be the same thing with state to state and interstate traffic and interstate commerce. You'll start to see significant lawsuits back and forth between the states as well. And this is probably, I think it'll get pretty intense at some point where you're going to start to see a lot of these kinds of lawsuits. And that will force the Supreme Court of the United States to start to become more involved in these kinds of issues. And they'll attempt to intervene, but one side or the other is obviously going to question their legitimacy, their authority to make decisions, and all that kind of stuff. And this is where we're starting to see a really kind of a big breakdown on how the government operates and what the social contract is here in the United States and everything. The next stage, again, overlapping, these things are all kind of overlapping as they go, is unification. And that's where you're going to start to see consolidated states and counties build basically like a unified front. So you might see multiple, red states joining in lawsuits against other states and or engaging in interstate commerce together exclusively and excluding other states that maybe they had previously done business with and stuff like that. It's just going to basically, you're going to start to see a more consolidated push by these groups that are kind of forming, and part of this one in this unification effort is going to be that those groups are going to seek constitutional remedies like the state-led Convention of States, to change the Constitution in their favor. And we'll probably see a serious effort for some counties to leave their original states and join states, neighboring states that are close by that more closely align with their values. Now, we've seen some of this in some places to a small degree, but it really hasn't been to a big degree. I think that it will probably increase and become more popular as we move, farther down this spectrum. Let's see here. So that was stage 8. And then our stage 9 is secession. And this is obviously where the states with the least amount of control will move to secede and divorce themselves from the Union and become autonomous. And that will naturally lead into contention, which is stage 10. And this is where you'll see open and deliberate attacks on each other. And this might start as economic attacks or interstate sanctions, but eventually it'll probably lead to open civil war. So that's just what I came up with. I don't know. This is not based off of any sort of research or anything like that. It's just purely an opinion of how I think that things will ramp up to if we were going to ever have a civil war. I don't think we're there, obviously. I don't think that we are, all the way through this list. I think there is definitely some aspects of it that we maybe have kind of creeped down, but I think we got a long ways to go, and I would prefer to not have to deal with this personally. But I do think that it's important that you guys out there, everybody out there, takes part in your local government. There's a key portion in this. When you break all this down, there's some pretty key elements as to the things that have to happen. And if you don't have the right people in the right positions, then this could all fall apart a lot faster than what it will now. You know what I mean? But if you do have the right people in the right parts, then I think we could probably push this can and kick this can down the road a lot further and maybe prevent it from happening at all. If we get up out of our seats and do our civic duty and take part in citizen-led government. So that is my pitch to you guys. I hope that you listen. And I know everybody has an excuse as to why they can't do it. Right? If you've got young kids, that's really difficult, taking care of kids and trying to take part in these things. You work a lot, you've got a couple jobs, it's hard to do, you can't afford it. I get it, man. It is difficult, right? But if we want our children to live in a place that is as blessed as we have it now and when we had it when we were younger, then we can't just sit on the sidelines. The reason that it has gotten as bad as it has so far is because we've sat on the sidelines and we didn't get involved, and we let other people who were activists get involved on both sides. That's in the different areas. It doesn't have to be one-sided necessarily. But real citizens, regular people, need to be involved. Not just special interests, not people taking money from special interest groups and all that kind of stuff, but just regular citizens. And that process takes a long time. It takes a long time to learn. It takes a long time to learn how the system works. And the process of coming up from city level to county level to state level is a training process that takes multiple years for you to figure out. And so that is why it's important for you to get busy now. Because in order for you to be able to have a positive impact 5, 6, 7 years down the road, when maybe these things are getting worse, you have to be in a position already in order to be getting trained for where you will be down the road, if that makes sense. So the time has passed for sitting on the sidelines, and it's important to get involved in your government. So that is my appeal to you. And with that, I will turn it off, and I will let you guys comment in the comment section below. How did I get it wrong? Lay your stages out and tell me how you think it's going to go. This is just like I said, my opinion. So anyway, thanks for watching, and don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.